welcome back to the No Score Review Show, where we have in-depth critique and nuanced discussion of some of your latest movies, video games, and television. I'm your host, Nick Green, and today we are reviewing another entry in the MCU television series, whatever you want to call it, the second season of Loki. Joining me this review is Zach Milne from Zach Milne Talks Movies. Welcome back,
I like
Zach.
to call it the Marvel DLC.
You know what? That's great. I'm gonna borrow that. I think that's great. I love that.
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me back, man. I'm glad to be here.
It's been so long, right? We just did our Marvels review. That was probably, it might be. I don't know what your thoughts were for this season, so we're just kind of going in blind. But the Marvels review was very very critical, I would say. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. But the first little bit of this review will be spoiler free. Don't worry about any details being spoiled for the second season. There might be some season 1 spoilers in the first little bit. It'll definitely happen in the spoiler section, but there will be an explicit warning for all of that, so don't worry about it. For now, we'll get into our expectations and general thoughts. So Zach, what did you think of the second season?
Yeah, I mean, for expectations, didn't have huge, to be honest with you. I really like Loki season 1. I think at the time it was my third favorite of the Disney Plus shows was Loki, season 1, and so I enjoyed it. And I was very curious to see where they were going to go with the whole He Remains and Loki's back, but they don't remember him. And I was very curious, but I'm not going to lie, it wasn't something that I was like super anticipating until it released. Right. When it released, I was like, oh, cool, Loki's out. I'll check it out. Yeah. But I wasn't like counting down the days, wasn't really like, prepping for it. The reviews started to come up for the first 4 episodes, and they were really positive, so that definitely helped too. Like, oh, okay, I think this is gonna be pretty decent. So then I watched it, and I think this is better than the first season.
Really? Okay.
I think this is the best Marvel season since WandaVision.
Whoa. Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's some high praise.
Enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this season quite a bit.
That's very cool. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it was kind of off my radar. Season 1 ended with a lot of questions for me as to where it was going. And then like once season 2 came out, I was that kind of confusion kind of resurfaced a little bit of like, okay, where are we going to go with this? And I think it delivered on most of it. I don't think I agree with the sentiment of it being the best. Is WandaVision your favorite?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I like the old-timey TV show stuff. So those first 3 or 4 episodes where it was just an homage to doing old style TV show. I liked those episodes just in that way. Like it tickled my funny bone. So yeah, I did not feel it start slowly like a lot of people did.
Right. I really liked. I think that was probably the favorite part of WandaVision for me, was the really wacky like homage to all of these different sitcoms and kind of utilizing their strengths to like the benefit of the story and everything. But I agree, Loki season 1 I think was my third favorite as well. I liked Moon Knight and Hawkeye a little bit more, just as kind of complete shows. Although now, like I say, I'm not as hot on season 2 as maybe you are, but as a complete package, season 1 and 2 feel pretty strong, and I'm very excited to kind of go back and watch just to see the full through line, because this really does kind of feel like one season of television, honestly.
Well, there are only 6 episodes a season. So
exactly.
They make up half a season of television together.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I think personally for me, I think it might have even benefited. Like there could have potentially even been of like an amazing 10 episode season, just
Mm,
overall, and not splitting it into two. Like, kind of looking back, at least based on memory anyway,
I
season
can see that.
one
That's a good point.
ends kind of like it would be a mid-season finale almost. Um, so yeah, I'm very intrigued to go back. There was a lot to like about this season. The first and final episodes were definitely the highlights for me. I think it starts on a really strong foot with the premiere. Um, I think my biggest standout for this one is the cast. The cast is just
Yeah.
amazing as all get out. Like Tom Hiddleston is a given, but like Owen Wilson and Kihei Kwan, and I'm forgetting her name, but Sylvie's actor were all great as well. Um, but and like just the look of the TVA, I actually forgot how much I loved the art direction for Loki season one until I started
Yeah.
like watching season two, and it's like it my third favorite show overall probably as of right now, but probably my favorite show, my favorite looking show. It's just such a cool like design of everything. The TVA looks so cool. All of the character designs are great. The VFX is amazing. The
Yep.
score is fantastic. It's just it fires on all cylinders. I think just some of the like weaker points for this season for me were related to some story and character beats here and there, but not a disappointing season of television overall for me. I would say.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, what like were some of your favorite non-spoilery parts of this one? Would you
Well,
say?
I will say I'll start off by saying like most except for WandaVision, which is why it's my favorite. And I think it's still my favorite. I won't lie, this season comes close to dethroning it. But with all the other Marvel Disney Plus shows, I've always like enjoyed how they started, and then they always kind of fizzle off, and I'm usually disappointed by the end, or it feels rushed by the end, or I didn't enjoy this part of it. Whereas with Loki season two, I felt like this season was focused a lot more than season one, and a lot more than
Hmm.
a lot of Disney Plus Marvel shows are. I
Hmm.
enjoyed it from beginning to end. Like I thought it had a great start and I thought it had a great finale. Like I enjoyed it
Hmm.
all the way, and everything in between too. I thought was solid. I really enjoyed it. Um, it's not like my favorite thing the MCU has ever done, but as far as on
Yeah.
Disney Plus, I think it's one of their strongest for sure. Um, I really liked because in the first season of Loki, I had trouble always grasping onto the concept of the TVA. The concept of the TVA for me, especially in the first season, felt jumping the shark territory for the MCU a little bit to me,
Oh,
where it
interesting.
was
Okay.
especially yeah, because I kind of felt like with the first episode in season one when Loki's like standing trial and he's like, oh well, the Avengers did that. You should be after the Avengers, and the judge is like, well, the Avengers were supposed to do that. You weren't. That's why you're a variant. And I
Hmm.
was like, that just feels like such a lazy way to just write off any like if you want it to happen, it happened. If it doesn't, it's a variant. It
Right.
didn't feel like there was a real rule to follow,
Hmm.
and this whole idea of this like I don't know, almost governmental society overlooking the entire timeline of the MCU. It just like it was so far out there from like the verisimilitude and the reality of the MCU that in
Hmm.
season one it was a tricky concept for me to really like latch
Okay.
onto and love. Whereas
Right.
I feel like in season two, the grandiose of it was scaled down a little bit as far as like what we focused on. It was very much centered on what Loki, what Mobius, what OB, which I love the introduction to OB. Kiwi
Oh yeah.
Kwan was like MVP of the season. So
Yeah.
happy to see him in there. He was fantastic.
He was so
It
good.
really focused on them trying to fix a specific problem that was happening that was stakes for the TVA as a whole,
Hmm.
but it was confined enough they always kept the focus on it that it never felt like the season like meandered or went off here for a little bit or went off here for a little bit. Like they kind of lost their track. They always felt like they were on the right track the entire time, the same one, and they had a objective at the beginning and they had a resolution to it at the end, and everything in between was to get there, to get from there to there. And I thought that they did that a lot better this season than last season.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I think I would agree with that. Like, uh, the actual workings of everything might have varied for me, but you make a very good point of I think everything did ultimately serve that through line. Um, and going back, I think it'll probably resonate a lot better. It's just some of the like nitty gritty, I think, and a lot of the like emotional work done in this season, and maybe even some of the like B plot stuff, especially
Hmm.
like with the um, kind of inner feuds of the TVA that maybe didn't quite like hit as strongly for me and felt were a little bit of a not necessarily a distraction. It was just like it didn't feel like it came to fruition as strongly as I thought it was getting set up to be. It kind of like some
Okay.
of the things kind of get wrapped up uh, pretty quickly, and then we're kind of moving on to the next kind of problem. Um, but yeah, I think as for an overall goal of the season, it was really strong, and I mean, it just ends on a really strong note. Like the more and more I
Yeah.
think about the finale, I was a little iffy at first because, and maybe it was more of an expectations thing where I thought because of the stakes of this show and with it including Kang and everything, and Kang being the big bad of this next saga, at least right now, anyway, until we're told otherwise. Like maybe I was just expecting more of it to play towards the overall big picture of the multiverse saga, and it kind of does in a way. Um, so I was a little bit underwhelmed in that regard, but I still like I'm warming up more and more to that finale every day. I think it was a very strong note to end on, and I think it was a great way to wrap up Loki's character. I think Loki
Absolutely.
was handled very well, like especially when you look back at the beginning, like before this show came out, and what the kind of premise of it was like because it spurs all from Endgame, right? When he like I think
Yeah.
I've seen a couple jokes about it. It's like, thank God Hulk took the stairs in Endgame, right? Like it's all spurred from this one small thing, but like it's crazy to look back and just see how much like real estate we got out of such a like small inconsequential thing, and like because we thought we already had kind of done everything we could with Loki, right?
Yeah.
um it's crazy to look back on and just see how much mileage they got out of Loki's character. And I mean, Tom Hiddleston again, like just knocked it out of the park. So yeah,
Absolutely. And
I
that's something too that I want to jump off your point there as well. It's
yeah.
actually really impressive of what Marvel's been able to do with this Loki character because when you thought of Loki in the past, it was like, oh, Loki and Thor. Loki and Thor is the duo. But that's because they're like brothers and they had that brother rivalry and they were enemies and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. When I think of Loki now, his duo is Mobius. Like when I think of Loki, I think of him with Mobius. Like
Hmm.
that's the like I love those characters together.
Oh
And the
yeah.
way that they're able to like get me to like totally get on board with that dynamic, and that's like the definitive Loki dynamic in my
Hmm.
mind now. That's impressive, especially when this character's been around for over a decade and it's
Yeah.
been that duo for like a decade, Thor and Loki.
Yeah.
They did a
Well,
good
and yeah,
job
he
with that.
was, if he wasn't a like main antagonist to like Thor and the Avengers, he was just kind of sidelined as this side character that wasn't actually explored a ton beyond being Thor's brother, like
Yeah.
chaotic brother, right? Like cuz like post Avengers, like cuz that was his probably biggest role until Loki. He was always like I think Infinity War would probably be the next biggest moment, and even then he's only in it for like the beginning.
Yeah.
um, so to see him get his full show and have his like character arc be fully fulfilled and come to fruition in a really impactful way is really impressive just on its own.
Yeah.
Um,
And Tom Hiddleston and the writers, they never lost sight that this is Loki, but it's not our Loki. And that's something I also really appreciate and find nuance with in this
yeah.
performance is the Loki that died in Infinity War is still dead. Like that Loki that we
Yeah.
journeyed with all the way into Infinity War to when he gets his sacrifice and his
Hmm.
neck snapped. He is still dead. This didn't undo that. This is just another version of Loki that went a completely different direction, had different experiences, and therefore
Totally.
he's the same character, but his arc and the way that he is different from that Loki while also having the same kind of traits. I really appreciated that. I thought they had that balance phenomenally well.
Yeah. Completely agree. Um, Cool. I think that's a good place to kind of step off into our spoiler territory. So if you haven't
Sure.
seen season 2 yet, please do go watch it. It's only 6 episodes. Um, and then come on back to hear our spoiler thoughts. So I actually had made notes for this review because there were things I wanted to make sure I touched on. Um,
Woo, Miss Minutes is horny. Woo!
Not in my notes, but yeah,
Better
great
be. That's
point.
the thing that stuck out to me the most.
What a so okay. You
I don't remember
joked,
that being in
but
season 1 at all.
no, no, not at all. Um, like yeah, you joke, but I think that was probably one of the weaker episodes and the weaker kind of character through lines.
Mhm.
I think, and it also is kind of like it's not. I'm not trying to be super critical of it, but like it's also kind of literally shrugged off with OB at the end of like, what's Miss Minute's whole deal? And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the weaker spots. It feels looking back kind of like a just for the sake of having an antagonistic force and having all this infighting at the TVA, right? It feels like it's wrapped up relatively quickly. Like it's really just contained within that one episode, pretty
Yeah.
much. We get that like one cliffhanger of oh, what's her name? The original like leader of the TVA with Miss Minutes.
Ravonna? I
Yeah,
think it's
Ravonna
Ravonna.
Renslayer is her last name. That's what I
Renslayer,
was thinking.
right.
Yeah, we get that like one episode like cliffhanger of that moment where they're like she's gonna sit on the throne and with like Miss Minutes or whatever, but it didn't amount to a ton.
Mhm.
um and I mean like it's fine when you're thinking in the grand scheme of it all. It's just kind of one of those B plots that didn't end up going anywhere. um and just kind of that whole uh through line with Victor Timely as well. Uh, I mean, what's his name's performance was a little. I wasn't sold on it
Oh,
necessarily.
Jonathan Majors?
Yeah, Jonathan Majors. I wasn't sold on Victor Timely's performance.
You didn't like the
Um,
choice of the stutter and the lisp?
Not particularly, but I mean, it
Time
did.
is moving
I
fast.
I will say I actually quite enjoyed that as a post credit scene. It felt very, even though like say what you will about
Oh, and Quantumania?
Quantumania, yeah, it felt very like ominous given the context of everything. It maybe kind of fell a little flat in the show itself. And then Jonathan Majors also like redeemed his performance a little bit with his episode of He Who Remains. I think that was a really great
Mhm.
like dialogue between him and Loki. I loved that scene a lot. Um but yeah, I think the Victor Timely like flashback scene episode was probably my least favorite or one of. Um
That's kind of fair. I mean, like there was a weird kind of like will they won't they with Renslayer and
and
Victor
Timely,
Timely.
yeah, that
That
was.
kind of felt a little
And then
weird.
it was
Kind
a
of felt like
love
it came out of
triangle with
nowhere
freaking Miss
with Miss
Minutes.
Minutes, and they ditch her, and then yeah, I could see why that was. I still enjoyed that episode, and I liked the Victor Timely character, and I liked that the choices that Jonathan Majors and the writers and stuff made for that character, they made him so different from He Who Remains. Who He Who Remains is kind of this theatrical,
Mhm.
very confident,
Yeah, all
kind of
knowing. Yeah.
snake. Whereas
Yeah.
I felt like Victor Timely was almost like a shell of a man pretending to be um trying to be confident, pretending to be this bigger figure, and he's also a scam artist. So
Yeah,
that's a little bit of the snakiness in him, but
yeah,
he's nowhere near the feeling of power that He Who Remains had, and I kind of like the way that Jonathan Majors played it.
yeah, yeah. I think part of the maybe some of the like disappointment I felt from this show, especially with the whole He Who Remains variant and Victor Timely through line setup. I think anytime, because of the kind of like conversations surrounding Kang and him being the next big bad, I think any time you start introducing Kang or like leaning into Kang as a character and bringing him up into like pieces of media for this, it's like, okay, here we go. We're getting some like big stuff, like kind of with Quantumania a little bit.
Yeah,
And I think anytime, almost every time now, it kind of like fizzles out, and then it's like, okay, so then what are we doing? And then like you're left kind of feeling a little unfulfilled. At least that's kind of how I felt. I don't think it damaged because, like, again, like hindsight looking back, I still think the show itself worked. Now seeing what the direction was that they were going the whole time.
right.
But I think some of this kind of first pass through watching the season is that like passive like disappointment a little bit, or like underwhelming nature of like anytime we're dealing with Kang, it never feels like it's getting uh like any farther or any more
Yeah.
meaningful. Like it still feels like we're very in the dark in regards to
I can
that
definitely see
character.
that because Marvel kind of set that expectation on themselves where they said Kang's going to be this overarching villain for these next phases. And
Yeah.
every time he's popped up, you keep waiting for that moment where you're like, big implications, and it never really is. Like He Who
Yeah.
Remains, he first popped up. It's like, they kill him. See you soon. You're waiting. Oh, Ant-Man. Ant-Man's next. Okay, you're waiting. Okay, they took him out. Okay, Victor Timely's next. You wait. Oh, he turned into spaghetti. Okay,
Yeah.
like you just keep waiting and waiting for something to like blow the universe up with Kang, and it just doesn't happen. And that's something
Yeah.
that Marvel set up on themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, like, to their defense a little bit, like when you look back at Thanos, he probably had even less development and screen time until Infinity War. It wasn't actually until, like, you could say, I guess, Guardians, he did have a more prominent role past just being in post credit scenes. But
Yeah.
like Infinity War was the first substantial time we got Thanos on
Yeah.
screen, and he was like the freaking protagonist of that whole film. So like maybe they will pull off something very similar with Kang, where we finally get a film dedicated to Kang, and like it becomes this big thing, right? So like maybe, but just with the amount of
Yeah.
projects and everything, it does feel like a bit of a stringing you along the whole time type of thing, right? Like so.
Yeah.
But yeah, uh, what were some other? Did you have any big notes you wanted to
I really like the
throw out
time
there?
slipping. Like I kind of
Loved the
was
time slipping.
yeah. Like I
Love
kind of
that
alluded
so
to in
much.
my non-spoiler thoughts. Like, first of all, I'm a big fan of Bill and Ted. Like I love
Okay.
the Bill and Ted films.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
way that they use time travel in this season reminded me of Bill and Ted quite a bit. So I had a
Oh,
lot of
really?
fun with that because it just, like I said before in season one, I did have trouble always grasping everything.
Hmm.
It was a lot to take in of like suddenly the MCU is being governed by this time variant
Hmm.
authority, and they dictate what happens in the timeline, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's different than what I thought was happening behind the scenes. But with this one, it was contained enough where it was like, yeah, he's just kind of slipping through time. It's very easy to comprehend. Like he's going through all these different um moments in time, and if he affects something in the past like Bill and Ted, it affects it in the future. So I loved when they were talking to Obi in the first
I
episode,
love that
and
so
and he
much.
slips to the past to Obi, and Mobius is talking to Obi, and he's like, have you ever done this? And Mobius is like, no, I never have. And then Loki mentions it, and then they cut back to Obi in the future. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I did. I made it. It's right here. Like, I loved all that. I thought that was so much fun. It was so playful. It was so lighthearted, and
Yeah.
it didn't bog you down with like trying to understand the
No.
quantum physics or whatever of it all. It was just it was very easy to understand. It was a lot of fun.
Totally. Yeah. That pilot, like I said, the pilot and the premiere and the finale were definitely the strong points for me. That was a great setup. I think they did a pretty good job of kind of catching you back up on kind of what happened the previous season without being too expository. Like even if you didn't watch the like previously on type of thing, I think they did a pretty good job of kind of getting right into everything, but not losing you too much. And they
Mhm.
also weren't too indulgent with the like time travel jargon. I think they were pretty stripped back and fairly straightforward with what they were trying to convey. And then having like the visual of the timeline device and all of the like branches happening, like the visual language was really clear as well most of the time.
Yeah, I agree with
um,
that.
I was really worried that the time slipping wasn't going to come back, but I'm really glad that it did towards the end, and we got like a sort of like a mini arc of him mastering that whole thing. um,
Might have been a little bit rushed, but yeah, I could buy into it well enough. The
a little
aura
bit.
or whatever it is of his family, his
Yeah.
friends.
Well, and
Um,
also at the same time, you say rushed, but then I was like, in that, I think it was episode 5 or whatever, I was like, did we really need this as a whole episode to itself? Like, I was like, it feels like so weird. Like, so little has happened in like 50 minutes of runtime. It
that's the
felt
one where
like,
they're all displaced back into their original timelines, right? Like
yeah,
Mobius
yeah,
has
he has to
kids and
gather
stuff like that.
everyone
Yeah,
up again. Yeah.
I thought they could have done more with that. Honestly,
I
like
think
I thought
maybe
it was
that
kind
could
of
have been a
short 21
better
episode.
like through line of the
Hmm.
season if it was like um Loki trying to gather everyone back up throughout the season, and then like trying to do that. I don't know, maybe it works in theory in my head, but maybe not so much. But I still liked the concept of everything and like
Yeah,
the science versus fiction conversation with OB and everything. That
they
was
totally
great.
ripped off themselves though with Infinity War though. Like when they're all turned into spaghetti as their
Oh,
universe is being
yeah, that
destroyed,
was
they
definitely an
they
Infinity
just did
War
the
moment.
dusting again. They literally
Yep,
had like, oh,
totally.
I don't want to go, Loki. I don't want like there was I'm sorry, like there was like all these moments where I was like, you're just doing the dusting again.
Yep,
It's just like
yep.
it totally felt like they were ripping themselves off.
For sure. Um, I think another weak point as well. I think Sylvie, like I said, I did really like her performance. But I think Sylvie felt a little shortchanged this season.
Yeah,
It feels kind of like she was pretty one note overall for most of the season. I really could have done with this is kind of just speaking to the overall uh sense of the show is I think I could have used more tangible stakes of the timelines being destroyed. Like I think, and maybe this is where the um all of Loki's friends being relegated back to their original selves or whatever, or their variants.
yeah,
Seeing more actual tangible things they're fighting for, like Mobius's kids, and like just Sylvie's life that she's built for herself. Just seeing that and like having that connection to be like, okay, we need to fix this because all of this is at stake. I think a lot of it was maybe relegated to lines of dialogue and literal lines on a computer screen of the different
yeah.
branches. So I think maybe that could have been handled a little better, but still overall not too disappointing.
I liked
Um,
that the stakes were personal, though. I liked that they kept it
yeah,
confined to Loki, his core group of
yep.
uh of friends, and they just kept it real personal the entire time. Like we really didn't see much of the TVA other than mostly like maybe two or three sets and like
Hmm.
maybe a collection of
We
like
did get a couple
seven
new sets
characters.
too, though, with the
Yeah.
pie room and Obi's
Oh
room and
yeah, the
everything,
pie.
right?
Well, the pie room was in season 1, I believe,
Oh, was it?
if I remember
Oh, it was
correctly.
just like the cafeteria or something
Yeah, I
that we
felt like there
saw.
was
Yeah.
less scenes of them, like, just, like, walking around the entire place the
Oh,
entire
yeah. Well,
time,
and they
like
also jump around to a bunch of different timelines
yeah,
and stuff
absolutely.
too, right? Um, yeah. What else? Yeah, I mean, what we did see of the TVA was gorgeous as ever. I don't think any of the I mean, like I did like the old, uh I don't know what you call it, but like 1800s Brooklyn or wherever they were, with the
Oh, yes.
amusement park and everything, and the Ferris wheel and all that. That was a cool set. Um, I don't think it quite got quite as bonkers as season one did with the like multiversal jumping concept. I think it was a lot more stripped back, which like
Which I
I
I
was
appreciate that.
ultimately okay with. Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely made it feel more grounded and more character focused, which is fine. Um, but yeah, what else? Yeah, I think just Sylvie in particular felt a little shortchanged overall. But
Well, all
like
she did was work at McDonald's and then try to kill a Kang variant.
the
She
McDonald's thing was so weird, man. It felt
Yeah.
so weird to me, and maybe it was just
Yeah.
the whole marketing like gimmick of it all that made me feel gross. But like, it just kind
A
of was like,
lot of
eh.
those yellow what are they called? The yellow arches around.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of those. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Yeah, although on the flip side of that, for like character moments, again, OB was fantastic.
Loved
Every
him.
time he
Love
was on
that
screen.
character.
Um, Mobius, loved his stuff. Like him, like you touched on it earlier. Him and Loki's dynamic is amazing. It's one of the best parts of this show, I think.
Yeah.
They get some really great comedic moments in like the first half of the season, and then they get a really great, powerful moment towards the end where Loki slips back into his past self in the interrogation room and everything. That was a fantastic moment. Owen Wilson really like put on full display his acting chops of like emotional beats, like the moment at the very end with him and his kids, him like just looking back at his like past life or whatever you want to call it. That was super powerful, super good.
Yeah.
Um,
Got to see him on a
yeah,
jet ski. Might not have been
got
in
to
the
see him on a
water, but
jet
we got to
ski.
see him on a jet ski.
Yeah, yeah, that was a great moment as well. Um, yeah, and I don't know if I have a ton of other specific things, but I do appreciate what it did this season, and it just really makes, I think it fixed a lot of the problems I had with the ending of season one, where it felt like a big cliffhanger. And watching these as like back to back as like one season basically of television, um, I think it's gonna age very well,
Yeah.
and it's just a great like uh deep dive into Loki's character. Um, and like
I mean,
yeah,
the
like one
ending. We
of
got to talk about the ending, though, right? I
the
mean,
oh,
where
yeah, the
they end up with
finale.
Loki.
Wow, that was a very powerful finale, I think.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
the look of it all with like the branches going into his cape, and he gets the horns back as well. Um, I also saw,
Sacrifices himself to a life of loneliness.
yeah, and which in the previous episode he literally confesses to not wanting to be lonely at the
Yep.
very end, right?
Yep.
Oh man, wow, it was so good. Like amazing performance from Tom Hiddleston. The like just the visuals of everything. I think the He Who Remains conversation was in that finale, right? I'm pretty
Yes, it
sure.
was. Yes, it
Yeah.
was. Because
I
he knew
loved
that
that,
Loki
like,
was gonna show up.
yeah, I loved the heel turn of like Loki freezing time as well, and like seeing He Who Remains react to that too, right? And him
Yep.
also, like, I also really appreciate the kind of subversion of thinking he's gonna have to kill Sylvie and then just not, and choosing his own path, right?
Yep.
I loved that moment. Um, so cool. I never expected to see the Yggdrasil tree, the world tree, being used as kind of like a motif for him like holding all of time together.
Yeah, that
Um,
was beautiful.
so
Beautiful imagery.
cool. The VFX in this show were amazing. I think it's probably one of the
Yep.
best looking shows of like the MCU, and maybe even one of the best things post Endgame, I would say. One
I
of the
would,
best
yeah,
looking
honestly, I would
things.
agree with that. Yeah, especially
Yeah,
like the temporal loom. Whenever they went into the temporal
so
loom and
cool.
all the colors flying around, and yeah,
Yeah, the
that looked
suit.
awesome.
Yeah, very cool. I loved the whole bit, the comedic bit of Loki learning quantum physics for
Yes, it'll take
centuries, the
centuries.
centuries later.
Centuries later.
Yeah, that was very good. I love the insinuation that they like killed Victor Timely like 50, like more than
Yeah,
50 times. and like the implication of he died simply because the thing rolled off of the
Yes.
platform or whatever one time.
Don't set it down; it'll roll off.
Yeah, very well done. Some great use of like time loop mechanics and stuff. It was really really good. Um, yeah, like the more I look back on it, there was definitely way more positives than negatives that I had with this show. Um, and I'm sure even some of the negatives will probably not bug me as much on kind of a rewatch. Uh, yeah, really enjoyed this season, I would say overall.
Yeah,
Um,
thought it was very, very good.
I definitely say, uh, I would say if like people haven't seen season 2 yet and they had never watched season 1, now is a great time to binge those back to back. I think
Oh yeah,
it would work fantastically as a concise 12 episode arc.
yeah.
So I definitely recommend it to people who have slept on it. And definitely don't watch it on its own without having seen season 1, because you'll probably be lost. I can't imagine watching this show without any prior knowledge.
Yeah, no.
Um,
But catch
so
the
yeah,
Marvels, even if you haven't seen Miss Marvel or WandaVision, you know.
yeah, exactly.
No
Yeah,
different.
yeah. Cool. Any other last minute thoughts before we wrap things up, Zach?
I just thought it was a really solid season, a very consistent season, a very focused season. Did a lot for this character of Loki. I love where he started, and I love where he ends with
Hmm.
being the lonely guy on who has to keep time alive, basically, and has to
Yeah.
sacrifice himself so that his friends can stay alive. Going to be really interesting to see the implications of that going forward, because the multiverse and the timelines with the TVA, I feel like have been separate things.
A
I feel like
little
they do
bit.
multiverse in the movies and the timeline stuff on Loki, and I feel like one doesn't affect the other. So I'm very curious to see if they're going to make implications of this Loki holding on to all the timelines affect the multiverse saga further in the movies. I
Yeah.
don't know what you
Well,
think of that.
it's also interesting because like when you think we kind of talked about this concept in the Marvels review of um chronological timeline of this, but Loki season 2 in particular, especially with literally that centuries later part,
Yes.
is like it really throws the whole chronological timeline because like a lot of it, I think, apart from the centuries later thing, could theoretically take place directly after the events of Endgame because like Loki picks up the Tesseract and then he's zipped off to the TVA. And I don't think
Yeah.
much time passes over that whole story, other than the obvious thing.
Well, we do know at the end of this season that Quantumania has taken place, because they mentioned there was a Kang variant on
True.
616 on like a sub realm, but they
Yeah.
took care of it, which is relating back to Ant-Man and the Wasp
Right.
Quantumania. So we
Yes,
do
that
know that
is
by the end of
true.
this season that has taken effect.
Yeah.
Other than
So
that,
I
I'm not
guess
sure.
you could maybe look reference back to how much time passes of from Quantum Mania between that and Endgame and everything. But yeah,
How long did it take for Scott Lang to write that book? That's what we
that's
need to
just
know.
thinking
How
that
long did
too.
that book take to write and put out? Then we'll know exactly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But no, it does seem to kind of have some uh parallel implications, like especially with stuff regarding the Marvels. I won't go into it too much regarding spoilers because this, especially this, since this video might come out beforehand, but the implications of the Marvels stuff like No Way Home as well and Doctor Strange
Yeah.
obviously, all kind of feel like they're running on parallel tracks a little bit. um but like with how season 2 ends, the reading I got at the very least is like, okay, so we avoided blowing up every timeline. We now no longer have a sacred timeline. We might have like the main one, the 6161 that we continue to follow. But now this kind of opens up the floodgates of, okay, there just is a multiverse, there is multiple timelines, right? And then we kind of go from there.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
like he's holding all of them, right? He's holding
yeah,
all the timelines, so they're all alive.
exactly. Yeah,
Whereas before it was all about getting them shut down. This season was about keeping them all alive, and
right.
he's doing that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with that.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. Cool. Well, Zach, thank you once again for joining me this episode on the No Score Review Show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please let us know your thoughts on Loki season 2. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What things did you like and or hate? Let us know in the comments below, or you can tag us on the socials. Zach, where can the people find you?
Yeah, thank you so much, man, for having me back. I had a blast. It's always fun talking Marvel and movies with you, and I guess TV. Yeah, you can find me at Zach Milne Talks Movies on YouTube. Just type in, Zach Milne. I'm sure you'll find me, or you'll find a figure skater. I found him a couple times, but
Oh, interesting.
yeah, Zach Milne Talks Movies. You'll find me. Twitter. At Milne Movies, Milne Movies, Instagram, TikTok, all the socials that are required to do this YouTube thing. You can find me many places.
Perfect. Awesome. And you can find me wherever you're listening to or watching this episode. I will have an episode because I think this video will actually go up before the Marvels. I recorded a review of the Marvels with the lovely Zach Milne before this one. So please keep an eye out for that. And Zach also did his own review. Are you planning on doing your own review for this as well? Did you mention
For
that?
Loki season 2, probably not. I
Okay,
I feel like it's just kind of there's so much coming out that I just got to keep up with, that I feel like this is
totally.
one that's going to get lost in the cracks. So I'm glad that I've got to do this with you. So thank you so much, man, for
That yeah, what a
bringing me on.
privilege. I
And
appreciate you coming on.
I will say, not to spoil the Marvels, but if you're gonna catch an MCU project this weekend, check out Loki season 2.
There you go. That's the TikTok clip review. Perfect. Yeah, I feel grateful to have you on to talk. I mean, I guess it is Zach Milne Talks Movies, so you're keeping it on brand at the very
Yeah,
least.
moving pictures. It's very
Yeah,
technical.
that's true. That'll be your second channel, Zach Milne Talks Talkies.
Talks moving pictures.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, go check out Zach's solo review of the Marvels, as well as his newest project. He's doing his favorite scenes of the Phase One MCU
Yep.
movies. Do I have
Every
that
Marvel
correct?
Cinematic Universe movie, favorite scene from every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Phase 1 is up. Phase 2 I'm working on currently, so should
Perfect.
be up a couple days after this is posted. Maybe it's already up. I don't know. You guys can tell me in the comments.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, so you can go check those things out on Zach's channel, as well as a bunch of other movie reviews as well, and his live show. He does great things over there, so please be sure to go give him some love. Otherwise, as far as my channel goes, I've got reviews for Spooky Season was last month, so there's a bunch of horror movie reviews. I have a dedicated playlist to that on my channel if you're interested in that type of thing. I also did a review for Killers of the Flower Moon if you're into more serious pictures, as well as a review of the Vancouver International Film Festival for this year. If you want to learn about some of the smaller movies making their way to the market this year. And yeah, otherwise, you can find me on all the socials at No Score or at No Score Reviews. Zach, thank you once more for joining me. As always, I love having you on. And thank you all so much for watching and listening. We'll see you in the next review. Bye bye.